Hello everybody, welcome to Theology 101. Welcome to our Friday series where we are going over pictures of faith from Hebrews chapter 11. Today we will look at an unlikely person listed in Hebrews 11. By faith, Rahab the prostitute did not perish with those who were disobedient because she had given a friendly welcome to the spies. Why is her story included in this chapter? Let's jump in and find out. Let me set the stage before we meet Rahab. From the time of Moses to Rahab, the author of Hebrews jumps 40 years. Israel constantly complained to God, and because of their lack of faith in God, God did not allow any of them, except Joshua and Caleb, to enter the promised land. Now the new generation of Israelites are ready to enter the promised land, but there is one problem. Jericho. Jericho was surrounded by walls with rectangular towers. These walls were double layered, and in between these double walls, there were storage areas, cemeteries, or even places for people to live. We will see how Rahab lives in the walls of Jericho because her roof was on top of one of the walls. Also, Jericho was a gatekeeper city that protected invaders to Canaan. So Israel knew that if they can't get past the walls of Jericho, they can't enter Canaan, the promised land. So Joshua, who was now the new leader of Israel, decides to send 2 spies to scope out Jericho. When the 2 spies enter Jericho, we find them in a very surprising place, a prostitute's house. What were they doing there? Usually people will go to Rahab's place to have sex with prostitutes, but these 2 spies have a different agenda. Rahab's house was a place where travelers would stay. It became well known as a public gathering spot to the point that the king of Jericho knew to check out Rahab's place when he heard that there were spies. This shows us that Rahab wasn't just a common prostitute, but also a businesswoman who ran one of the most popular gathering spots in Jericho. The 2 spies go to Rahab's place because they wanted to gain information. When the 2 spies arrive at Rahab's place, the latest town gossip is about how God delivered Israel from Egypt with miracles 40 years before. The spies hear how everybody is afraid of the God of Israel, so they knew they had a good chance to overtake Jericho. While this is going on, word gets to the king of Jericho that 2 Israelites are spies in Jericho, so he checks with Rahab. But in a surprising twist, we see that Rahab doesn't hand over these 2 spies, but betrays her city. Rahab hides the 2 spies and told the king's soldiers that she did not know where they went. All she knew is that when the gates of the city was about to close for sunset, they ran out. So the king's soldiers run out to the gates to look for these spies. Knowing that the spies cannot escape through the front gates because that's where the king's soldiers had just left, she decides to bring them to her roof, which was on top of the wall. And when she places these spies on her roof, she covers them with flax, which is a plant used to make textiles. Now the question you might be asking is this: why is Rahab risking her life to hide these spies? It is because she heard about how the God of Israel delivered them out of Egypt by parting the Red Sea. At this point, Rahab makes a deal with the spies that if she helps them, that they will remember her and her family when they invade Jericho. Now on the surface, it might look like that Rahab is just striking up a good business deal to save herself. But if we look with a magnifying glass at what Rahab says, we see her faith. Keep in mind that Rahab grew up in Canaan, and all she knew was a polytheistic worldview. She learned about many gods who were constantly fighting one another. But then one day, she hears about a God unlike any of the Canaanite gods. This God performed miracles and defeated Egypt's army. When Rahab heard this, she knew that the God of Israel was unlike any God that she has learned about. And after hearing about the God of Israel, Rahab searched to find out more about this God. The reason I say this is because I want you to notice some of the phrases she uses. For the Lord your God, He is God in the heavens above and on the earth beneath. Literally, she says Yahweh, your God, He is God. Yahweh was God's personal name revealed to Moses, which means I am. Rahab didn't just acknowledge some God, she confesses faith in Yahweh. But I want you to notice the last part of her phrase. He is God of the heavens above and on the earth beneath. This phrase is found only 3 other times in the scriptures up to this point, and every time it is used to refer to God's sovereignty. Do you see how Rahab's words are not just words to save herself, but words of faith? She was acknowledging that Israel's God, Yahweh, is sovereign over all of creation. How did Rahab know this? How was she able to quote scripture when she wasn't raised as an Israelite or ever entered a Jewish temple? We can safely guess she heard the story of the Exodus from different travelers who stayed at her lodge over the years. Her heart became hungry and wanting to know Yahweh, and we see now with her confession of faith that her faith has now come alive. In fact, James, the younger half-brother of Jesus, describes Rahab's faith. And in the same way, was not also Rahab the prostitute justified by works works when she received the messengers and sent them out by another way? Clearly, Rahab didn't just say the right words to save herself. She truly believed in Yahweh, and her actions proved her faith. Before the spies leave, they tell her to tie a scarlet cord out of her window so that when they invaded Jericho, they would know which house not to destroy. We know what happens next. The walls of Jericho fall except for one part, Rahab's lodge. According to an early 1900 excavation of Jericho, they found out that a part of the wall did not fall like the rest of the walls. A part of the wall still stood, which is where the dangerous part of the city would have been. So only the poor and prostitute lived on this part of the wall. Can you guess who lived on that part of the wall? Rahab and her family. And so after the walls of Jericho fell, the two spies fulfilled their promise and brought out Rahab and her family and let them live with Israel from that day forward. As amazing as it is to know that God preserved Rahab and her family because of her faith, what is even more amazing is how God used Rahab afterwards. We know from the biblical genealogies that Rahab was married to Shammon. While we don't know the identity of the two spies, some theologians think that one of those spies might have been Shammon. The reason why is because Shammon was an important prince in the tribe of Judah. His father, Nahshon, was the leader of Judah during their time in the wilderness. By the time they arrived to Jericho, Nahshon has died, making Shammon the main leader of this tribe. And we also know that when Moses earlier sent 12 spies, he didn't just send lowly soldiers, but the main leaders of every tribe. So it isn't a stretch for Joshua to pick his two most trusted leaders to go to Jericho, which is why scholars argue that Shammon first met Rahab as a spy. After rescuing her, he fell in love with her, married her, and she became a part of Judah's royal lineage. You want to guess who Rahab's son was? Boaz. If you remember the book of Ruth, Boaz was a godly man who married Ruth when she was a widow in order to redeem her. We can probably guess how Boaz became a godly man and why he was willing to marry a foreigner, because his mother was a foreigner saved by Yahweh. And from Boaz and Ruth came King David, their great-grandson. In fact, from Rahab, we see multiple kings and 8 different prophets, including Jeremiah, who are all descendants of her. Rahab's story teaches us that God continues to work in unexpected ways through unexpected people as long as they identify with God by faith. If you want to study more about Hebrews 11, I'll leave a link to a recommended resource in the description box below. If you missed the last video about Moses' faith, I'll leave a link here for you to watch. Until next time, see you!